Welcome to the Security Today podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Baer, and here's another segment of Bid2Bank. This is one of my favorite segments as it was my first venture into video interviews, and I really feel like a lot of value has come out of the guests and the people that I've had the pleasure of getting onto the Bid2Bank episode and segment. So here we run through everything between the bid and the bank with a little bit of marketing on the other side, but Bid2Bank sounded better. And so we run through everything that the people go through in their own companies, and then it's just a display of how somebody else can do it. And I am so excited. This has been a long chase of maybe 3 or 4 months of trying to get my good friend and colleague Pearce on the Bid2Bank segment. So here's Pearce with All Green Lights. Thank you so much for coming on, man. And I'm going to give the mic to you for just a second and let you kind of introduce who you are, who your business is, and maybe just a little bit how you got into it too. I'm always interested how guys fall into the positions that they're in now. So,
well, first off, it's an honor, buddy, and I'm glad we finally could sync up and align to do this. I've been looking forward to doing it for a while. My name's Pearce Smithwick. I'm the owner operator of All Green Lights. We are based out of State College, Pennsylvania. Pardon me, home of Penn State. How I got into what I do. How much time do we have?
We got as much time as you want, man.
I'm just kidding. So I am not trained, did not go to school, didn't do anything like that. I basically self-taught, school of hard knocks, the whole 9 yards. I have a background in biological research, and in all the labs I worked in, I was always in charge of doing the system maintenance and keeping everything going and the computers up and all that fun stuff. So long story short, when we moved to PA, I quit the job I had, which is not even worth getting into. My wife's like, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, I'm going to do something I want to do. I'll work in computers for a while. So I, on a basic MSP approach, went out and started knocking on doors downtown, said, hey, I'm Pearce. Here's my company. Here's what I can offer you. And within the first day, I signed up 3 clients. And this was like, break fix MSP work at the time. It wasn't really managed services. And did that for a couple of years, and things kind of got better. But then I started getting into doing cabling work, and it just snowballed from there and took off. And so back in 2016, we had an opportunity to go overseas. My wife had a Fulbright in South Africa. So I kind of shut the doors on the MSP stuff, then relaunched as All Green Lights when we came back, and have been doing that ever since. So from then on, it's been all structured cabling and installation work and that kind of stuff.
And you kind of run a unique approach at it, as in that you are the sole owner and operator of the whole thing. You don't really carry guys under you.
I don't carry guys under me. I have been very fortunate to be able to partner with lots of really good teams around the country. The guys from NWTEL, Dan Abson's group, the guys from NetLion, Abe Brown's group, partner with bunches of guys from TKW. And TKW, for those who don't know, is Teknowledge Worldwide. It's a nonprofit we're all a part of. But, work with Ray out of there, work with Mick, work with Marco, worked with Steven. Everybody. I've worked with probably 24 guys out of that group.
Yeah.
And basically the way it is for me is, I do a lot of sites solo, don't get me wrong, but I oftentimes land projects that are much bigger than I can do by myself, or there's just schedule conflicts. And that's when I bring in other guys. And, it's all part of the whole community over competition approach that we've always sort of embraced. I'm just looking to get the work done, and I want guys who are talented and are good. And it's easy to turn to that pool, if you will, and be like, hey, let's go do this for a week. And we go have a great time, get the job done, carry on, do the next one.
Yeah. That's awesome. I had Dan Higdon on the last Bid2Bank, which would be a couple weeks now ago.
Yeah.
And he's from that TKW pool. We gave a big shout out at the end of it. And you along with Ray and Marco and Brandon are co-founders of that nonprofit.
We are.
You guys started it up, and
let's give credit where credit's due. Brandon and Ray sort of had the impetus to run with it. And they invited me to come in, sort of after they had the idea going. And it's been great. The 4 of us all share a common approach, and the whole, approach of trying to give back technology improvements to needy operations, needy communities. And the projects we've done so far have been fantastic. The community keeps growing. It's nothing like crazy. Don't get me wrong, but it's a quantity growth, it's a quality growth, not a quantity growth in terms of membership. So we've got really, really good guys in the community. There's a lot of good skill sets in the community. There's so much good chatter in Slack about, how to do things, materials, latest technologies, what have you. And it's a great resource at the end of the day, and it's free to join and be a part of. So that's the best part.
Yeah. So you run as that solo operator, and then you work in tandem with good relationships that you have across that group and across, I'm sure other groups that you've been a part of or other people you've met along the way. So you primarily now you work in that IT and cabling infrastructure datacom space.
Yeah.
Do you work outside of that?
So there's sort of two areas I work in. So we do the infrastructure, the cabling, and then we also do a lot of smart hands work. And by that I mean the network turnups, the hardware deployments, all that stuff for our clients. I mean, like most people who know me do, I work primarily in the veterinary space for one big national client. Mm-hmm. I've got other clients in different verticals, but nowhere near the volume of work of what I have with these guys. And so typically what we do is we will build a site for them. And by that I mean we do all the infrastructure for the LV. And then when they go to open, we go back and then deploy everything, light the network up, turn the site up, and get them ready to open. Yeah. So it's sort of a two-pronged approach, if you would, two different skill sets.
Yeah. Awesome. And so that kind of leads me into my first kind of Bid2Bank question in the marketing space of it. And this even goes back to before your stint in South Africa. What's kind of your most sold product? Like when you started to get into the space and now that you're in the space, what would you define as the product that you are selling the most of? And then do you market at all? Is it all by word of mouth, or how do you kind of approach the idea of I need a new client or I've got space for somebody else? How do you find that?
Let's take the first part. So what's the product? Data drops. I mean, let's not sugarcoat. We go in and we build a whole network, and by that, that's all the data drops you need for Wi-Fi, cameras, data printers, what have you, voice over IP, the whole 9 yards. So what we tend to sell is the solution to say, okay, you're building a new facility or you're upgrading or renovating a facility. Here's the network we're going to design for you. And that network consists of all the components of the structured cabling. And so that's the bulk of what we do. I mean, the labor for the installation side of it is good, but the money for us comes from the cabling. That's plain and simple. But we can do both for the client. And because we do both and we know both sides of the equation, if you would, it works out really well to have us do both, because we can see the hurdles or the challenges we're going to have at a given site that, say, another team who doesn't know this client or doesn't know the veterinary space very well, sure, they can cable it, but they might miss a couple things that are important in terms of locations or different call outs on the prints or what have you, because they just don't have the experience working for that client or in that space. So that, I mean, hands down, what we sell is a structured cabling product to say, here's your network. It's going to work and everything's great. I mean, we do all the work from the core design engineering, all the Wi-Fi, all the layouts and the prints, everything else. We do the as-builts, we do all the certifications. That's the complete package end to end. It's not just like we'll go in and put a bunch of drops in and hope they work. I mean, we see that all the time. We do everything from start to finish. Mm-hmm. The installation work, like I said, it kind of goes hand in hand with that. It's just a follow on to say, okay, you've already built the site. How about you finish it for us and just do that? And there's nothing tricky to it. It's just a matter of saying, okay, we have all this equipment, we have the plans, where do we land it all? How do we configure it? And let's go from there. So that's simple. Getting new clients. I don't market. I never have. I've never done anything, zero marketing effort, other than when I first launched that day I was talking about, when I went downtown and started knocking on doors, and I had a little half sheet card of at the time then I was called Tech Caddy. I was like, here's everything Tech Caddy can do for you, and I would give it to the managers. They're like, oh, that sounds cool. That's the only marketing I've ever done. Everything since then has been word of mouth. And I got lucky to land this client initially. It was pure happenstance. It was way back before we went to Africa. At the time, there was a whole different way of how they lined up the work for it. And someone called me and they're like, hey, we have this project tomorrow. The tech we have lined up canceled last minute. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, sure. What does it entail? And so we walked in, did the work, handed it off. The project manager at the time, who became a really good friend of mine over all these years, calls 2 days later. He's like, hey, can you be in Michigan tomorrow to do it again? I'm like, what? He goes, just drive, be there. Everything will be there. Just repeat, wash, rinse, repeat. Okay. And it kind of like went from that to where we are today, literally. And so there was times we were doing, a site every 2 months, every 3 months, to the heyday when things were really crazy for these guys. We were doing 8, 9 sites a weekend, and that's when I really had to turn to lots of people for lots of help to get it, going at the same time. Now, it's different for me now because this client has changed the way they operate. And so we're sort of pivoting to answer or to pivot with them to respond to their new needs. So the volume of work has fallen, but the scope of the projects has increased tremendously. Like we're doing much, much bigger projects, much, much bigger sites. I mean, we were part of the largest vet hospital in North America a couple months ago. We did the entire Wi-Fi design for those guys, laid it out. We didn't do all the cabling necessarily, but we came in and did a lot of the cleanup behind the people that had been hired for it and did all the installation work and everything else. And that was a massive undertaking that never could have happened without everybody I called on chipping in. I mean, there were so many people involved in that project, and it was fantastic. And we had a really good time doing it. But because things have shifted so much, I am looking for new clients. And so I've been lucky because all the stuff I post on social media, I do get a lot of inquiries saying, hey, we've seen your work. We love what you do. It's super clean. Could you look at this project for us? Don't get me wrong. I've had the luxury of saying no to a lot of that because I've been so entrenched with this one client and doing so well with them. I'm like, I'm good. I don't need all this other work. I don't need to expand necessarily, nor do I want the headache of having all these employees I've got to be responsible for. Mm-hmm. But that's changing. So I'm looking now all I've been doing for the last 5 weeks is bidding out all different kinds of projects, not necessarily veterinary stuff, but other stuff as well, because I'm starting to chase down different work. And so I'm hearing about work from people contacting me on social media, different job boards, different what have you. And, we'll see what hits and what lands. I've loved the run that I've had with veterinary services. It's been fantastic. But if it changes and I start doing all car dealerships or something, so be it. It's all cable's cable. It's just a different environment at the end of the day.
So let's take a second and just kind of dive into that social media presence, because I know that a lot of guys that I get on this episode, actually marketing is not usually huge. I feel like a lot of low volt integrators that I come in go, well, I mean, I've tried this or I've tried that, but mainly it's just word of mouth. And so I do want to dive in a little bit because I feel that some people who want to grow or some people who want to take on more clients, I would at least like them to pull from segments like this an idea that they can start to develop that will get them maybe that stream of new work. And one of those is obviously social media. So we met on social media. Instagram is kind of the low voltage choice of the industry, I would guess, because there are a lot of people who do low voltage on Instagram, posting their work and posting about tools that they're using. And there's a big tool community on Instagram that you can find in this space. And you, as well as I feel have been there kind of from the beginning. So I would say 7 or 8 years ago, it was like there was no one on the gram posting the type of stuff that you post or the type of stuff that I was posting from the locksmith side of things. Like there just was maybe 5 or 10 guys that I talked to that were doing it on Instagram. Yeah. And since then there's hundreds. Like companies get on there. Yeah, they post all of that. And it's been a pleasure to watch the stuff that you were posting. I mean, early on you were posting just this excellent work, which I also would love to hear maybe what drives some of your excellence in your work, because that's something that is really easy to find lacking when you sub out or when you look at other guys low volt. Like excellence isn't really what they're aiming for with their work. But when I found you and I reached out, and obviously, you're kind and you're open-hearted. And so we kind of started our friendship there. But what has that experience been like for you? And what are some things that maybe even unintentionally you curated or catered to on Instagram that has caused you to be kind of seen or known and maybe brought you some work?
So probably best to say, how did I get to Instagram in the first place?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's kind of a funny thing. I mean, I was on Facebook years ago, and there are a lot of really good groups on Facebook that um, I was a part of. You know, you learn a lot. You talk to other installers, other technicians, especially on the MSP side. You know, the IT Bog and some of those groups like that. They're fantastic in terms of resources and learning and exchanging ideas and whatnot. For reasons that are not worth getting into, I said enough with Facebook and got off of it. But at the time, my youngest or my middle child was getting really heavy into Instagram.
Mm.
And on a whim, I was like, let's just make an account and sort of see what he's doing and just keep an eye on him, make sure he's being safe. But I quickly realized a lot of the knowledge that I gave up on Facebook, I could find on Instagram because I found guys who were doing similar work. So I started interacting with those guys, posting my work, and literally just from a community standpoint, trying to meet guys to get better. Being self-taught, my way of getting better is to look at other people, copy good when you see it, steal shamelessly. I mean, I don't mean that to be silly, but I definitely have stolen ideas from lots of other techs that are better than me because that's how you improve. You see what's good is and see what works. But the whole idea of giving back to the community to me made sense in that regard. So I don't think it was intentional when I started, but I definitely started saying, okay, here's what we're doing and this is working, or here's what we're doing and this is not working. How could we be better? And guys would give me feedback, etc. Or guys would ping me like, hey, we just started this project. Here's where we are. How could we make this better? How can we overcome this hurdle? Or what can we do differently? And so I was very open about giving out free advice because I like to help people. I mean, I like to see things be better. And my aim has always been, and this is sort of one of the underpinnings of TKW, and I think Ray and Marco and Brandon would echo the same thing, is if we can showcase what good is and show the community what better is and lift the community up as a whole, that's awesome. And just make the whole overall level of installation and finish and technique and everything else better, then everyone's going to win. Because to me, the biggest pain in the butt is walking in to a site, saying like on a service call, and you just find a dumpster fire to deal with. And that drives me nuts. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't. I mean, someone chose to say, that's good enough. Yeah. When you can do excellent, excellence not that much harder to do. And it's so much better when you chase it better or chase excellence. Because think about the guys coming behind you. You know, you don't care, but someone's got to come deal with your mess that you left. That's not fun for anybody. So why would you even go that route? You know, additionally, if you're going to do the work, do it right. I mean, I've had that idea drilled in my head since I was like a little kid by my dad and my grandfather. Like, look, if you're going to do it once, do it right. Don't screw around. And that's the way I've always approached stuff. And so if I can help the community be better by showing what I do and what I'm learning and what I'm figuring out from other guys, to me, that's a win. And I think part of what, I don't know that I've landed a whole lot of work from it necessarily, but I've made some really good friendships, which has helped me land more work because I'm working with guys who are really good. I mean, the guys I work with, the guys I mentioned at the start of this, you know, the NWTels, the NetLions, Libertas, Enterprise, Trican, all those guys, they're all phenomenal technicians in their own right. And so it's the sort of thing where, like, if I do a site with these guys and we're doing it together, I don't have to worry about them. I don't have to babysit them. I don't have to question what are they doing. I know it's going to be good, if not excellent or amazing. And that's, to me, when I'm trying to run a big project and there's so much going on, to not have to worry about the guys who are working with me is a huge weight off my shoulders. I can just be like, look, y'all go tackle this half of the building. We'll meet up in a day and we'll do the next half and we'll carry it on or whatever it is we're doing. And that just makes the project go so smooth. It's a great reflection on my operation as a whole for the client when everyone who's working with me is chasing the same level of good. And then that's more work for me in the long term because the client knows, okay, we're going to have Pearce's team here, whether it doesn't know who it's going to be, like who he's going to work with, but we know no matter who it is, it's going to be good work. And let's just go with that. So
yeah,
does that answer the question? That
100%.
Around the.
Yeah,
okay.
100%. I think that like you chase excellence, you take pride in your work, and you want to show it off and be a part of the community. And so you put it on social media, and it now becomes a viable route to gain work, to gain friendships that lead to good subs, that, to gain people who can give you a tweak here or there and say that, hey, this is what I'm doing when it comes to, this aspect of my business. And then you can tweak that and makes your business better. Yeah, very viable option. I think that, 10 years ago, you would have laughed at it and been like, oh, it's just kids posting. But it's an adult platform, and it's something that I think I've seen really good interactions on there when it comes to low voltage, including watching your page and watching you interact with other techs too.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I kind of go out of my way to try to, I like helping people, I like to see better happen. And I mean, in my mind, it's like Instagram or TikTok, they're both platforms. And it's funny because I have way more followers on TikTok, but I post very infrequently on there. And I don't think that platform's taken off from the stance of the gain that we have on Instagram, if you would. There's still a lot of noise, a lot of nonsense and silly stuff on TikTok, and that's fine. It's a different platform. It's good for certain things. Mm-hmm. But there's definitely guys making an effort to try to curate content and curate stuff that's really good to show it there. The problem, I think, is it's a wrong format. Like their short form videos don't play well for that kind of stuff, although they do longer stuff now. But I think guys are having a hard time embracing, trying to figure out how to make it work in that venue, whereas Instagram pictures can tell 1,000 words, and really good pictures can capture someone's attention and be like, look, that's what they did. Let's look at that and study that and figure out how they did that kind of thing. That's where I started off finding guys who, I mean, I think one of the first guys I followed, and I don't even know if they're listening to your podcast, but would have been Nantucket Networks. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing they did this like AV rack in some beautiful home up on the Cape. And I just went, Jesus, that is beautiful. What can I do to get to that? That's what I was thinking at the time. And then it's sort of been the same thing, just seeing what other people do, trying to copy it and trying to share my mistakes as well as my wins to try to help other people get better.
Yeah. And I think that you mentioned in your definition that you think about the guy behind you. That's something that you and I share and that we've, built friendship over, because oftentimes in the field, I would think to myself as I was wiring a can or servicing it or relabeling it or whatever it be, I would think to myself, it is more of a reward to me that the next guy opens this can up and goes, holy shit, that's good work, than anything else, like I was like fighting for that guy's approval, even though it was some mythical, who knows who it is. But it's that type of mentality that leads to just excellent work. And the beauty of it is that mentality, first of all, I feel like is easy to spread in people. If you can present it and you can live it while you're in front of them, like when we're at meetups or we're at, techs givings, charity events and stuff like that, if you can live it and spread it, people catch that and they're like, yeah, I want a piece of this.
100%.
And then that helps the industry overall. And so if America's, that's the win. America's backbone of infrastructure, if it's being dealt with excellently, everybody lives better. And same with the security aspect too.
Yeah, everything that it falls into the low voltage umbrella. Mm-hmm. If it all gets better, everybody wins. I mean, that goes without saying.
So moving from kind of that, that marketing and kind of just, I feel like one thing that you display really well is you take relationship in both ways. And I've had a lot of guys on here that talk about the relationship with the client, how it seems to be, I'm kind of building these Bid2Bank segments, and I feel like I'm building a research project that in the end, you'll be able to like highlight the thread that is all the way through the project for any low volt integrator. And it seems right now to be communication. So I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but I think that guys talk about their relationship with the client and how important it is to foster that and how important it is to keep it alive. But I really like that you do that as well as looking outward or, to the left in your industry, and you keep the relationship alive with other low volt integrators and other low volt technicians, and
Yeah.
how important that has been to you. So coming from that and harnessing it, then you get these projects that fall into your lap, or you get work to bid out. And when you're bidding, what sort of softwares do you use to bid your projects?
I try to keep it kind of simple. I mean, we do a lot of work in FieldWire, and you've heard that from lots of guys on here before.
Yep.
Bluebeam is a godsend. I mean, I'm in Bluebeam every day looking at stuff and marking things up. As well as anybody, Ekahau for wireless design work. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There is no substitute for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those three are sort of my three key applications, if you would, to take a project and go, okay, here's your bid package, bring it to life, and create a bid that we can use with that. I use Excel all the time for tracking, and I mean, not for tracking, but for spreadsheets to calculate everything and make it go. And we do very rough elevation work for the racks in Excel, because I can share that with other team members and make changes on the fly really easily. Obviously, we prefer to use Visio for the final as-builds because it just looks cleaner. But I mean, for a live document that everybody can integrate with or work with in the fly, Excel is fantastic. So those are sort of the main ones we use. From an account, like the bid, to create the bid itself, I've been using Xero for years, but my accounting team is trying to transition me to QuickBooks. And I'm sure I'll just use it the exact same way, but we use that to basically make the bid itself, and then put that inside the bid package with an introduction. It's, all the caveats and the assumptions, everything else, and submit that into the client for review. So it's kind of a couple different applications, but they all work well together and let me, as a one-man operation, turn out a bid that looks comparable to some much bigger operations. So,
Yeah, those are all really good platforms. And I think it also highlights that I want this segment to do a couple of different things, not just help other business owners that are running in the low volt space, but also help individuals who might be a tech or an employee that would think that they would want to run a business themselves one day, because I love seeing techs step out onto their own and do really well.
Oh, that's great.
So I love to kind of get that in front of them, but it does display a little bit that there's no single pane of glass when it comes to running that stuff. Like, you have to kind of mix and match and piece things together.
Well, it goes with the old adage, the right tool for the right job. I mean,
Right.
all those pieces of software I mentioned, they're all excellent at certain tasks. But if there is something that does everything really well, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it costs a small fortune to integrate that into the operation. I mean, these things they're not expensive, but they're not cheap. But at the same time, it's the cost to do a business. If you're going to be able to turn stuff out that looks good and that you can use from tracking to project management to what have you, you're going to have to spend some money, and that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never regretted the money I put into Ekahau, never regretted the money I put into Bluebeam or any of the other projects we mentioned. It's to be able to manage the site within FieldWire, have a team, in Alaska, if you would, updating me on everything they're doing, and I can see it essentially real time, track that, help them with any hiccups they have. That's priceless. Okay, and it makes the project just go so much smoother.
Yeah. So I know that in the veterinary space, I've worked a little bit in it as well. And so you come into contact with kind of like retrofits. Like, sometimes you get an older vet clinic that now needs to be brought up to speed.
Yeah.
So when you do retrofits, whether it's in veterinary space or whether it's in another vertical, how do you acquire the data to help build the quote before you get out there?
Well, I mean, the first thing is we ask the obvious question: do you guys have a set of prints that we can work off of that showcase what you're doing in terms of the retrofit or the renovation? And if those aren't available, and even if they are available, sometimes I've gotten stuff that's literally the back of a napkin scratch. Here, we're going to add this building there. It looks about this size. Roughly. And I'm like, okay, let's see what I can do with that. On-site visit's critical. So, and that could go from everything from just inventorying all the infrastructure they currently have. Sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes it's a Wi-Fi survey. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's an equipment survey. But it's time on site to both talk to the client to say, okay, y'all are going to add on 8,000 square feet over here, consisting of extra exam rooms or whatever it may be. what do you want it to be able to do? What are the features you need, and what are the things that the corporate is saying you got to have in there? Let's work within those constraints to deliver that, or work with the GC to say, okay, I want to have all these different things featured out. Here's how we'll make it happen. That's the easiest way to do it. But you can't do that just to get a prints typically. Maybe over a phone, but 9 times out of 10, it's always an on-site visit. That's just the simplest way to do it.
Do you feel like the outside world of low voltage is easy to convince of that on-site visit, or are they sometimes resistant? Do you charge for that? Like, what's that look like for you?
So there's a charge. Time is money, and the effort we put into a project like that, it's not for free, if you would. The ultimate cost gets rolled into the final project cost. It's usually not. It's a very small percentage of the final bill, if you would, for me to fly out or fly someone else out, spend a day or 2 days doing these things and come back. It's just not going to be a huge dent in the overall budget. But the value that it brings in terms of data for us, and data that we can then take and say, okay, we've been on site, we've seen all these things, we've talked to you guys, we understand what your challenges are. Here's what our proposal looks like. We're going to take your renovated space and add all this infrastructure to it there. We're going to help you guys clean up your rack from where it is now, and we usually have a picture, to a mock-up of what it's going to look like when it's cleaned. And they're like, wow, that's going to be great. Giving them the visuals to say, where they can visualize what it is that we're going to do in their space, that winds up being a very good selling point. And because it's one thing to sort of talk them through it over the phone, but if they can see it and sort of understand visually what it's going to look like and how it's all going to lay out, that usually goes a long way towards winning them over, if there's any hesitation at that point.
So when they are won over and they accept the quote, and you get into kind of that project management, like it's off and it's rolling, what's kind of the first, like when they say, yeah, let's do it, what's the first 3 steps that All Green Lights kind of takes as they get started in that project? Yeah.
Usually it's a series of meetings with the project managers, the GC, and the hospital staff or hospital leadership team, if you would, to make sure that we're addressing all the asks that they have and all the wants they have. Once we've got that, then I can go back and say, turn what was the bid into the working contractual document. Say, okay, this is what we're all going to agree we're going to deliver. I'm going to deliver this to you guys. You agree that's what you've asked for, and it's a final thing. Because once we can get that signed and sort of in place, yeah, there's going to be change orders. There always are. But at least we are in agreement that this is what the end goal is going to look like. So we get those things in place. And once that's done, then I can sit there and go, okay, if this is my overall scope, then I need to start working on materials. And I'll start working on my vendors to say, okay, I need X amount of cable, jacks, or whatever it's going to be. Start lining up materials, getting a plan for, if I don't already have them in the warehouse, how am I going to get them to the site so that when we show up, or the guys I'm working with show up, everything's ready to go. So it's sort of like the meeting to plan, the agreement that we're all in sync, and then a good solid effort on logistics to make sure that once the project gets going on the ground and there's guys there, we have everything, and then we're not like, oops, we forgot a rack or whatever it may be. So, because it's happened.
Yeah.
One of the challenges we had really early on was the client wanted to supply everything, and I'm like, that's fine. That we'll do labor, you supply the materials. But so often we'd start off and we'd show up and like, oh, we have problems with shipping. It's going to be 2 days. It's like, well, why are we here? And finally we just said, look, everything that we're in charge of in terms of infrastructure, let us handle sourcing and logistics, and we can ensure they're never going to be late and they're always going to be there and we can go. And once we sort of came to that mutual agreement of making the projects run smoother, it's been fantastic ever since, because we just handle all that. It's easier that way.
Yeah, definitely. And so that kind of leads to a little bit of that customer experience, which is something that I try to hit on every Bid2Bank that we do, because it's so important. And I do feel as if some of the work that I've had to walk into, or some of the clients that have, either been won by the company that I'm working for, or when I was out in the field, you start talking to them and they start telling you about the last guy. And it's always like the last guy, like, just botched the customer experience. Like and there seems to be a lot of those guys out there, more than there should be. So when it comes to that customer experience, where do you feel like in the life cycle of the project, like where is that customer experience really vital?
Everywhere.
Yes, I knew you were going to say that.
Well, I mean, there's no single point where it's like, okay, we got to just nail it on this meeting. Like that just doesn't exist for me. It
Hmm.
From the initial, introduction to like start talking about the project itself, or maybe seeing if we want to bid on it or whatnot. I think even from that first initial impression, if you're not leading with everything and showing them that you are honest, trustworthy, somewhat of a knowledge expert in your field, and I don't mean that in an egotistical way, but you can talk at a level that shows you know what you're talking about, but convey it at a level that the client understands. Because most of these
Mm.
clients aren't necessarily tech savvy. You tell them you need X number of data drops, they're like, "What's a data drop?" Or you talking about their firewall integrations or their network switching requirements, and they're like, "What?" And you have to find a way to make them understand what that's going to give their operation. So from that initial impression all the way through to the end, the communication and the client interaction has got to be pretty much on point. And I've made plenty of mistakes where we've either screwed up our project in motion or we've made a mistake on site, or one of the guys I'm working with made a mistake on site. But what I found is the faster you own that mistake and the faster you're like, look, we goofed. Okay, we didn't order enough materials, or we blew through a drain line, or we did whatever it was we did. Admit it, own it, fix it. That solves so many problems with the whole overall experience. Because a lot of times when the client's complaining about the last guy, it's the last guy who came in and did, oh my God, you won't believe what he did, but they didn't admit it, they didn't own it, they didn't fix it. They
Mm.
just did it. You know what I mean? So then the customer, the client in that case, has to go find someone else to fix it, make it right, and take care of it. And that's no one should have to do that. Like if you're going to make a mistake, you make a mistake. We all do. Just admit it, own it, fix it. And that's the kind of thing like working with other guys around the country, even if I'm not there and even if I'm not like available immediately for them, if something happens, they all know that's the approach I have. And they all know that, they'll call me up and be like, hey, we screwed up. We drilled through the wrong wall, or we did this, we did that. I'm like, fine. What's it going to take to fix it? Let's let the client know that we made a mistake. Let's fix it and move on. And just, that's it. There's no point dragging it out. There's no point in trying to like sugarcoat it or bullshit your way out of it. You made a mistake. Be done with it.
Yeah, that's something that Frankie Salyer from Cicada Systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and I really connect on that piece. We've talked about it several times, but it is you'd be surprised how easy it is to keep a client. Like you can really kind of fuck up and still keep the client if
Because
you
they
just
don't know that they have options. That's the
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, if you just do exactly what you said. You admit it, you own it, and you fix it. Definitely. And
100%.
so you've dealt with, I mean, you've been doing this how many years now?
When I first launched, that day I went downtown and started knocking on the doors. That was like 2007, maybe.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
But I mean, so All Green Lights has been officially All Green Lights since 2016.
yeah, yeah. But that's like well over, what, 15 years almost?
Something
That's
like
like
that.
yeah, that's a good amount. So you've seen a lot of customers. So do you have any takeaways from how to approach the customer experience, because so many different clients are so different, and you always get a manager, you get a project manager or a GC, and you have to deal with so many different personalities. Are there some takeaways that you have found over the years that maybe a listener could be like, oh, that's good, I should remember that?
Yeah. It goes without saying, be honest. I mean, honest in the sense that don't bullshit them, don't mislead them. If you don't know an answer, say as much, but let them know that you'll find the answer. You'll find the way to get the answer they're looking for. I think that's critical in everything you do. And that goes from everything from client interactions to subcontractor interactions, whatever it is. Just be honest with people. They appreciate that more than you'll ever know.
Hmm.
Past that, I think there's a lot to be said for reading people. And by that, I mean, when you're having a conversation with someone and you can sort of watch their facial expressions or their body language and understand that either they're not comfortable or they don't understand or whatever it is, if you can gauge that, interpret that, and respond in kind to either address that discomfort or answer the question that you think they might have. And that could be as simple as just literally asking them, like, hey, I know we just went over a lot of material. Is there something that doesn't make sense? Because I can, go back on that. Something as simple as that is to check in to see what's going on with them. That works really, really well a lot of times. And it's, to me, it's always been about keeping stuff simple. We've all heard that a million times. The KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. But even in talking to people, if you can keep the ideas behind what you're doing or the technology that you're talking about or what have you at a very simple level that anyone can understand or that they can understand, then I think you're going to do really, really well. I've seen many times where tech companies like, oh, well, you've got to talk about that. And it's right over their head. And you can just see their eyeballs glaze over and they have no idea what they're talking about. And you've lost them. Like either A, they're not interested in the project anymore, B, they've got so many questions, they don't know what to do. And so they're just kind of stuck about analyzing the bid or whatever it may be at that point. That doesn't help anybody. And so there's managers and people you'll deal with who definitely you can do that with and they'll understand it, but you've got to be able to read people. And I don't know that that's a skill. I guess that's something you can teach people with experience, but it's also something I feel like I've met a lot of people in my life who are very good at reading others, but a lot of people who have no clue. Like it just, the signs are there and the cues are there and they just go whoosh, right past them. So it's learning to sort of gauge people and understand what they're, where they are in the conversation and responding in kind to that, I think. And I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but it's a skill to have that I think helps you. I don't want to use the word sell, but it helps you be engaging and helps you move the ball down the field in the process of, maybe we're past the initial bid discussions and maybe we're in contract discussions. Well, you can get to the point where you can sign the contract so you can move on or whatever the hesitation may be to keep the project on course.
Yeah, definitely. And yes, that answers the question. In fact, I feel like that was my peach of this episode. So I tell people that the Bid2Bank is a peach grove, and you get to walk through every episode, and there's a couple of ripe peaches that you get to pull out and just kind of make your day better. And that's one of them for me, man. Like just check in. We got to remember that when we're running through this stuff with clients, like that's excellent advice to just go back, check in. I know we went over some stuff.
Yeah.
Does everything make sense? Was there anything that you weren't too sure about that I can clarify for you? That goes miles. And saying that you need to, if you can teach it or not. I know that it's always been something that's been interesting to me is body language, human behavior, how to use that for the advantage of the relationship, not just like manipulating someone for your advantage, but just using it for the advantage of the relationship, understanding cues and knowing how to, there's a guy named Chris Voss. He teaches interrogation through the masterclass platform. He's got a couple books. He talks about repeating the last three words or using the question going into it saying, hey, would it be ridiculous if, and then posing what you're looking for the outcome, because it gives them a little more comfort in the conversation.
100%.
They feel, down to earth with that. And so, I think that's right on point. And I'm really glad you brought that up because that's something that I don't think we've touched on in Bid2Bank, but it is something that is really crucial for business owners or for somebody who's working for a business that's in front of the client. That's something that you got to really keep at the forefront of your mind when you're talking to them. And that's hard to do when the strike was overcut and you pulled one too many drops or you missed a drop over here. It's hard to remember when you get back in front of the client to employ that,
I've met lots and lots and lots of really good techs in my day, but a lot of those techs, they're great technically, but they're not good at the social level of the engagement and the
social emotional. Yeah.
And that's when you find those guys, those are the guys that you want to just keep around and always want to work with and partner with. Mm-hmm. And so, that's to me, when you can find those, to steal your words, those are the peaches. Those are the guys I want to have on my team.
Yeah.
The guys I want to have on my short call list. Like, hey, we got this project going. I need 4 of you guys to come down here and help me out and, be good guys. because I know they're going to be those people. It's awesome.
So once that project kind of gets wrapping up and you're dealing with the finance side of your business, that payment is coming in. I guess my first question with that is like, how do you accept payment? Because I know that those guys who want to start a business or those guys running a business might have
Yeah.
problems in that area. So what sort of things do you use at All Green Lights to take payment? What's their payment form?
Yeah. I mean, that's just brass tacks. We take checks, we take ACH or wires, and we take credit cards. I've never been paid in cash. Don't expect to be paid in cash.
Mm-hmm.
It's just easier for everybody. You need something you can track and whatnot. If I have my choice, I really don't like checks because I've had so many issues with them either being delayed, lost, or what have you. I want something that's traceable. If you're going to send me a check, FedEx it or do something else. I mean, I just had one today. It was sent 30 days ago. I got it today. I'm like, where's it been? And I can't go to the post office like, hey, what's been happening to this check for the last 29 days?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just showed up today. The client's like, yeah, here's a picture of it going out this day. It's 30 days ago. What's it been doing for the last 29 days?
Yeah.
I mean, that's annoying to me. So I definitely like instant payments. I don't do Venmo. I don't do PayPal because there's just too much mess with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But wires work. If you work for me, I'm almost always going to pay you on a wire or ACH. Mm-hmm. Unless you want a check, I'm not going to cut you a check. I'm going to get your details. I'm going to pay you like that because I know it's going to hit quick. Because we want to get paid. And I try to pay guys who work with me as fast as I can. I cannot always do that. And I'll the first admit it because the size of the projects we do, I don't carry that much float necessarily. And there's going to be times when the clients, they're late paying. And it is what it is. But I try to be, like we were talking about earlier about being honest. I'm honest with the guys. Say, look, here's what we're up against. I know we wrapped the project up. We haven't been paid yet. I'm doing everything I can to get paid so I can get you guys paid. Mm-hmm. To me, that all goes back to the communication. As long as people know there's an effort there and they know that you're trying to honor your side of the agreement, it's okay. It's when you ghost them and be like, yeah, I know you haven't heard from me in 6 weeks. Sorry. No one likes that, especially when there's money on the line. That's not cool to anybody. But yeah, that's what we do to get paid. We manage it. We've been managing it in Xero, like I said. My accountants want to move to QuickBooks. And so I'm letting them deal with all that and just tell me it's done and set up and ready to go. But they both work really, really well. I do, like I said earlier, I do all the quote work, if you would, inside of Xero and then convert it into the actual proposal. I'm sure I'll be doing that in QuickBooks now once they switch me over. But yeah, I like to be paid on the days we agree. That doesn't always happen, but I like to make it simple. So I try to accept everything other than cash. And most of my clients, since they're national, they're not going to pay cash anyway. So it's fine. Yeah.
When you get that money in or when you're looking at forecasting a budget and there is money to pour back into the company, chasing that excellence that you were talking about, how do you invest into yourself and into your company?
I have a very soft spot for very good tools. So I'm quick to go. I try to have good tools on hand for me, and I always try to make sure the guys who are working with me have what they need to do the job. I mean, I've always said, if you work with me, you've always heard me say, we're not going to let the tools stand in the way of getting the job done. I mean, It just doesn't happen. We did a site down in, I forget, Alabama or someplace. And I'll never forget because we got stuck in Atlanta. We had to drive over. It was an ice storm. None of our bags made it. None of our tools made it. But we had to start work the next morning. So we got up the next morning, took everybody to whatever it was, Walmart or someplace. We all bought clothes. I bought everybody clothes. So they had stuff to do. We went to Home Depot, bought everybody all the tools they needed to get going. And because I was like, we're not going to sit here and burn 2 days waiting for everything to show up. We're going to work. Mm-hmm. So I'll always pay for good tools. And guys, if they're working with me, if they need tools to finish the job, I'll pay for that. In terms of reinvesting back in the company, I do invest in software to help me do the job better. I invest in training to help me become a better technician. I mean, I'm going through different certifications, going through different courses, and reading everything I can as well to do that. That doesn't necessarily cost money, but I do put the time in to do those sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, if I had employees, I would definitely roll that back into training as well as incentive programs for the employees to keep them motivated and want to stay here and keep doing good stuff. But I would definitely pour as much as I could into training them to become better techs. Because like you said earlier, it's kind of cool to watch a guy go out on his own and become a really good locksmith or a really good installer or whatever it may be, and foster that and know that you probably helped that guy get there. That's rewarding.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is pretty much Bid2Bank, and now we're at my favorite part, which is the last two questions of the episode, which are the humbling question and the bonus question. So first is the humbling question, because I like to keep an air of humility in everything I do. So if there's going to be a segment, I want guys to walk with me in that. So where's one area or process that you feel like maybe you're soft on or All Green Lights needs to get better at? What do you feel about that?
I need to be better about chasing more business. I've been too complacent about letting work come to me and word of mouth referrals and all that. Because, like I said earlier in the thing, I've turned down plenty of stuff where people contact me like, "Hey, we got this cool thing to do," either because I'm busy or it doesn't look interesting or I don't have the time, whatever it may be. But because I'm operating very differently now, I need to be much better about finding new business and finding new areas to work in to sort of diversify the income streams and diversify what we're doing and not necessarily relying on one big national client or a couple of big clients to sort of keep everything going. I know that. I just haven't taken the steps to go after it. So that's one of the things. I mean, it's like you and I were saying before we got on the recording, there's some big master plans in play. That's one of the things that I'm looking at right now is what are the things I need to do to become that next level, if you would?
Yeah. And then the bonus question. So kind of wrapping it all in and summarizing it based on your experience moving between that marketing, that bid, that project management, all that stuff to the bank, where would you say that the focus is most critical in completion of the job? And I know that you're supposed to focus on everything, but if all of it has to fall apart, what's the one spot you feel like needs to really not fall apart?
Communication with the client.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, you can't have a breakdown in communication with the client. It doesn't matter what's going on with the project, if it's going well or sour or what have you. You got to keep them posted. You got to keep them updated on what's going on, and you got to let them know that you're aware of the status, and if there's something that needs to be remedied, that you're going to address it moving forward. I mean, I know some of the guys we talked about before how they share field wire access with their clients so they can sort of see daily what's going on and whatnot. We do that too. I mean, the clients, if they want to, they can log into field wire, click on any part of the project and see what's going on, see the pictures from the day, see our notes as team members back and forth to each other to say, hey, this is what's happening. Or we'll include them in, say, a Teams chat about the site so that they can see all the challenges that we're facing as the technicians on site. And if they don't agree with what we're doing or they have a suggestion or they want to do something different, they can interject there as well. I just feel like you can't over communicate, if you would. I've yet to have a client tell me, you know what, these are great, but there's too much. Stop with all the updates. That's never ever happened. If anything, it's always like, hey, it's been 2 days. What's going on the site? We need to know what the next plans are, what the next step is, or what have you. So for me, if you can anticipate that request and keep them posted on what's happening and keep them posted on what you did, any challenge you've had, as well as what the plans are moving forward, I think it's money ahead for everybody. It's kind of the approach that, the GCs have on their calls all the time when they update. Okay, here's where we're on the site. The subs are doing this and this, that, and the other. You're doing the same thing for your client. You're keeping them updated on how everything's going. So no matter how the project itself is going, or no matter how the day you're having, what have you, to me, the one thing that can't fail is that communication with the client. And I'd piggyback on that as well because of the way I operate, also communicate with the guys who you're working with. If I've got a bunch of guys working for me and I'm not necessarily there, pardon me, I will check in with them every day to be like, hey, end of the day, what do we do? Or what happened, or what do we need to make tomorrow better? Just to make sure that everyone's in sync. And it's just not even, it's not even that it's like a set thing that we do. It's just sort of a natural cadence, if you will, where we've been working together so long. We all know, all right, let's make sure we have a plan, check in if there's any issues, but then also let's have a little closeout to say, here's where we are. Tomorrow's going to look like this. And that way, if they're short something, I can order it and they can go pick it up. Or if there's something we have to deal with from a design standpoint, I can get the project managers involved and be like, hey, we're facing this problem in 2 days. How do we want to tackle it, kind of thing. Communication is everything.
Mm. Yeah, that seems to be the silver lining between all service or project work, is that communication strand. So I actually have a bonus question, and this is only because I know you, but I know that I call you the creator and the Don father of the hashtag community over competition. And so can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I feel like some people think, oh, community over competition sounds nice, but they still feel guarded in their business, in their day-to-day, and they don't want to give too much away. And I feel like that comes from a little bit of the old head mentality that the trough isn't full, that there's not work out there to go get. But can you talk about how you've seen it play out, because you do live that for sure?
First off, there's plenty of work out there. We're all fools if we say the trough is full. There's so much work out there to be had. It's not even funny. It's just a question of, are you willing to put in the work to go get it? And by that, find it, secure it, bid it, etc. But to your point, or to your question, yeah, community over competition, that's something, I mean, that harkens back to sort of pre-Teknowledge Worldwide. There are other communities we were part of that was sort of kind of taken off to an extent, and then we started Teknowledge, and then it really took off. Mm-hmm. To me, the embodiment behind it is simply one of, it's how we get better. It's like you and I were talking earlier on, as a TKW as a community, if we're going to raise the level of work within the low voltage industry and make the next guy's job always easier or that much simpler, you've got to think about how you can help the community, if you would. And because I know there's plenty of work out there, and we're all going to make money. When I bring guys in to work with me, we all still make money, even though we all have our own businesses. I'm still going to pay these guys well. I'm going to pay them what they have earned, which is generally way over market rate, because to me, I value what they bring to the table, and I value what they do to enable me to complete projects that are bigger than what I can do single-handedly. So it is a community. And to me, it's a community that we all work together in, we all benefit from, and we all profit from. And so to think that I'm going to gatekeep anything from you or Mick or Marco or anybody else in TKW or anyone outside of TKW, that's silly. There's no gain by doing that. I mean, all it does is hold the level of work back, limit people on what they can do, and it's pretty negative. I mean, I've been on sites where it's like, you see other trades, the guy's like, hey, I got to figure this thing out and do whatever. He's like, well, figure it out. That's what you're here for, apprentice. Figure it out. That doesn't help anybody.
Right.
If you know how to solve that problem, show them. They're the apprentice, for God's sake. Show them how to be better. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing here. I mean, not that we have a whole lot of like journeyman apprentice structure within low voltage, but there's definitely guys who are definitely more skilled, and there's guys who are not as skilled. But if we can all teach each other and show each other right from wrong or a better way to do stuff, we're all better. And I just don't see a gain by gatekeeping anything. I mean, you look at the stuff I put out on social media. It's all about either I screwed up, how did I learn, or hey, this is really cool. Or I do a lot of where I'll showcase what other people are doing. I'm like, hey, look at so and so. That's a really slick, way to do that cable lacing. That's a really slick way to use that tool. Or look at this thing they just discovered. I love sharing what other people are doing, because again, it helps everyone else see what better is.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree with you more, man. I'm 100% on that page, and I think that's what's fostered our friendship in all these years. And so thanks for coming on, man. You are someone that I have a lot of respect for, and I feel like you being on my podcast is kind of like the Super Bowl ring of podcast interviews. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember when I got Pearce on, so no, I appreciate it, and I thank you for your time, man, and I hope that in the future I can get you on to talk maybe something more specific. So
anytime you got my number, give me a call, buddy. We'll do it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. That's the Security Today podcast, Bid2Bank with Pearce from All Green Lights. We'll see you guys next Wednesday, and be the better tech, community over competition, and check out
Always.
Technology Worldwide. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.